Ben is the COO of StockCrowd, which is a digital fundraising software company. StockCrowd is the market-leading fundraising software in Spanish-speaking countries with offices globally. Its customers include NHS trusts, Russell Group universities, and international business schools, leading international charities, as well as cultural organisations such as the Guggenheim Museum, and have raised an impressive £90 million using StockCrowd software. Ben has over 20 years of experience managing businesses within financial markets at JP Morgan and Barclays. He now dedicates his time as a charity trustee and running StockCrowd. He is passionate about how technology can help organisations to better connect and fundraise with their community supporters. And in March last year, Aluminati partnered with StockCrowd UK to allow institutions to enhance their bespoke community platforms with sophisticated fundraising capabilities. And before Ben takes to the stage, I'd just like to play a short video to explain our partnership in a little more detail.
You have a fully engaged and vibrant community. You also have great fundraising campaigns. But have you thought about what would happen if you brought these two things together? Aluminati have partnered with StockCrowd, a leading fundraising technology company, to deliver a holistic, community-powered fundraising experience. Unleash the benefits of community-powered fundraising by embedding your campaigns at the heart of your community platform. Position your giving opportunity where people are feeling their most collaborative and connected. After making a donation, enable your donors to celebrate their gift and share their reasons for supporting your campaign, inspiring others to do the same. Launch targeted fundraising campaigns with their own community space, enhancing the campaign with community management functions such as discussion boards, resource sharing, and shared stories. Alternatively, insert tactical micro-campaigns at specific points of engagement, such as asking mentors to donate to the program at the point they volunteer. One university was able to raise over £100,000 from a community member wishing to expand the mentoring program they were part of. Hit your campaign targets by mobilizing your community with an integrated community giving experience. Individually, Aluminati and StockCrowd are the technology leaders of their sectors. Together, they provide the ultimate community-powered fundraising solution. For more information or to book a demonstration, visit our website at www.aluminati.net.
Ben, welcome back to the Aluminati Creating Connection webinar. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Very nice to meet you, everybody, and thanks for making the time. Well, I think StockCrowd, just maybe a bit of background for everybody. We've been going since about 2017. Started in Barcelona, and we saw a number of problems in the fundraising sector around how organizations were connecting with their communities and being able to have an ongoing dialogue and learn as they fundraised around what was working and what wasn't, as well as being able to draw in new audiences. And that's been a real common theme across all charities that we deal with around how do they draw new audiences into their cause. And so StockCrowd, in a nutshell, is a white labeled own brand software. So what we do is our software turns an organization's website and digital channels into its own fundraising platform. So you're no longer needing to have an intermediary to process money or to process data. All of that information and the relationship with the donor is held by the end charity, the end beneficiary. So so the money flow is moving directly from the donor to the charity without passing by StockCrowd. I wanted just to share a few examples of the kind of thing that we do in respect to how to engage communities and mobilize them. But before I do, I thought it might just be worth touching on some of the trends that we see both in the fundraising sector, but also across the fundraising software specifically, which might resonate with some of you on the call. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can all see my screen. So as mentioned, we work with a host of organizations, and the relevance of this is that, I'll come on to in a moment, but different organizations, whether they are universities or schools or hospitals, they all have slightly nuanced needs. And I think the main thing I wanted to encapsulate with this slide is just to demonstrate the versatility of StockCrowd as a fundraising software. It can be relevant to any size of organization, as well as being able to target specific needs, dependent on which sector and which problems an organization is looking to solve. And it's also relevant in the sense that what we see in the fundraising sector is that there is a slow and accelerated transition towards digital fundraising. And I would go as far as to say that it's not a transition which is optional any longer. Any organization that doesn't have a digital presence with regard to engaging and fundraising through its online platforms, I don't think will be sustainable in the long term. And so that creates a number of challenges, because for the large organizations, that's not necessarily a problem, but for smaller organizations that don't necessarily have the in-house technology resources, the knowledge and the experience of how to launch effective campaigns and to be able to learn as they go forward, it creates a problem. It creates a barrier to making that transition. And some of the ways that we've designed our platform enable small organizations to get onto the journey at zero cost and in a very low touch, low resource intensive way, so that they can participate in the journey that, as we say, I think everyone's going to have to take at some point. So some of the trends we see, if you look at the sort of the bold text on this slide, just a couple of things that we're seeing in the industry. Digital is growing, it's growing at a rate, and COVID really did accelerate that. But we're seeing now in the mainstream press, as well as when we speak to organizations, there are real cost pressures coming through. And those cost pressures, I think, are going to get worse before they get better. And that's going to create a need for all organizations, not just fundraising ones, to look at opportunities to rationalize cost and rationalize technology. And we think that ultimately that will StockCrowd will be able to solve a number of those issues for organizations. And the reason for that is there has been a proliferation of fundraising platforms, particularly in the UK and in the US over the last 5 years. And in some ways, it's one problem, one technology, or certainly one problem, maybe sometimes more than one technology. And you can't be in a position as an organization where that's an unsustainable infrastructure, because that means that the employees within that organization need to learn how to use each of those platforms. There's a level of integration that needs to happen with all of those platforms into CRM databases and other infrastructure, accounting infrastructure, for example. And so we do think there's going to be a real requirement to consolidate. And we think there is a shift, and we can see a shift happening around the trends in fundraising, where individuals are increasingly wanting to fundraise in spaces that they already participate in. They're wanting to embed fundraising into their daily lives and not necessarily use specific technology. And so there are some lessons and some changes that I think the industry needs to respond to help that. Because the next generation is by far and away the most generous generation in history in terms of fundraising. And so that presents a real opportunity for organizations in terms of being able to fund their projects and their causes. And we also see a theme around fundraising becoming more community driven, more cause driven. But that hides another story, which is in some ways organizations are looking to connect communities at a global level around themes. But there is a trend in terms of an actual giving profile where people want to give much more locally. They want to see the impact of their pound donated. And so that creates quite an interesting dynamic, particularly for organizations that are acting internationally and across borders, how to manage those two trends in a coordinated and a coherent way. In terms of software, I think the one thing I would say is that I think technology is really just one part of the puzzle when we come to fundraising. It's not the be all and end all. And so there are certain things around the fundraising software that need to also be in place, and we're building that as a company. Those kind of sort of hub and spoke type infrastructure to build the knowledge centers so that organizations have the capabilities with regard to data, that they can understand the steps required to take the initial steps into fundraising, but also as they become more complex, that they can use that data to learn and predict. And that's where things start becoming really interesting. Because that ability to use data from an analytical standpoint opens up other doors in regard to financing products and the ability to be able to budget and take risk as organizations, if you know how successful campaigns will be on a predictive basis. And the final thing really around this is with software is that we're seeing a need to connect organizations. So typically an organization would go out to a fundraising community of donors and they would launch a campaign and run that campaign. What we're seeing now is this need to be able to bring in multiple parts of a community, whether that's businesses, students at a university, if it's cause-based, people that feel a connection to a particular cause. And that, again, that opens up opportunities for organizations to tap into new audiences that don't necessarily feel an affiliation to the institution, but feel an affiliation to the cause. So here are some ways that we're doing this. So the first one is this concept of marketplaces. So with StockCrowd's technology, what we can do is layer fundraising campaigns on top of one another, and there's no limit to how many layers we can create. And so I'll give you a base example. If you were a university or a company and you wish to align your brand with certain themes, or if you wanted to, say, for example, provide a platform for students to support causes that they care about, or to launch their own fundraising campaigns for ideas, PhD research, for example, for particular themes, then you can start to organize that in different layers. And so here's just a quick example of organizing by Sustainable Development Goals. So the UN 17 are the largest problems facing the world. You have a series of marketplaces here that are around those goals. So if I'm now a supporter of the university, I'm a supporter of a particular cause, I can go into the poverty marketplace and I can start to find organizations that are doing something for that particular theme. And I can then tag my own campaign onto those charities, so that I'm now able to, as an individual, take the action that I want to take for a particular cause. But the advantage here is that an organization, because it's all happening within their four walls, within the marketplace that they control, they're able then to aggregate all of the action, quantify it, and be able to tell their story, promote the brand, and explain the impacts that the community of that organization is having across a variety of different causes. So marketplaces, we think, is quite an effective way, and we're seeing a lot of interest here from companies that are really looking to establish their brand credentials and provide a platform for employees to take action, but rather than the historic approach of sort of charity of the year type top-down diktat. What they're now looking at doing is creating a number of partnerships with charities that align to the brand, and then providing opportunities and flexibility for employees to engage in the way that they want to engage, and with causes that they personally care about. The second one, I think, is around peer-to-peer technology. So I'll give you an example here, and going back to a point I made earlier around needing to consolidate. So this is an example of peer-to-peer technology, and it's extremely flexible, but the core premise behind peer-to-peer fundraising is that you're turning your donors into fundraisers. No longer are you going out and asking for money from one particular party. What you're now doing is finding the friends and family and colleagues of that fundraiser and drawing new audiences into your cause. This is an example of a marathon where you have individual teams and so individuals and teams fundraising together. There's companies involved in these campaigns, such as BlackRock and 91. And the technology is enabling essentially the sprawling fingers to be able to go out into the broader community and find new donors and connect them to the cause. And because the organization owns the data, they're then able post-campaign to have a much more meaningful direct dialogue with those fundraisers and with those donors to bring them into the fold of the organization. The peer-to-peer technology is also very flexible in the sense that it can be used, for example, for in-memory giving, for in-support giving, for health-related charities where perhaps someone's had a catastrophic accident and their family and friends want to rally around them. So because of this need to consolidate and to reduce cost, technologies we think that have a broad appeal will stand the test of time. The other thing we can do with this type of technology is to start to tool up fundraisers. And so I'll give you one example. If I'm a charity and I now want to fundraise for that charity, then perhaps I would like to set up an event. Maybe I would organize a small concert in my back garden. Have tickets, so I can sell tickets for that event through the platform. I would then be able to have merchandise that you could produce, but all of that is owned and controlled by the fundraiser as opposed to the organization. So you're really putting some quite powerful tools into the hands of the community of fundraisers to be able to go and take action in a much more flexible and complex way. And then the final aspect is really around the need for cutting through. Because of some of the challenges in fundraising today, it's critical for organizations to be able to get their message across quickly and in a unique way. And one of the things which some of you may have seen already are some of these concepts around creative templates. And so I'll just show you a couple of examples to give you a sense of the type of thing that can be done. So this is a digibus. It's a bus that's has been built and is now touring through South Africa and the townships, and is being converted into a mobile classroom. And what this charity decided to do was to break down the components of the bus that were required, and then you could go and fund those different components through a campaign. You can buy some or one of these components. Two things that really come out of this campaign. One is it's visually very different to anything that you see in terms of fundraising campaigns, generally speaking. And so it gets attention very quickly. But the other thing is it helps to start explaining to a donor what their funds are contributing towards. And that's really important. People want to feel that connection now. And so that's been a successful campaign. And here's another one similar guys, but this is the Tyson Museum in Madrid as an example, and they needed to restore a series of paintings. And so what we've done with our technology is to white out paintings that were needed restoring, and a donor now can essentially choose what part of the painting to restore at different prices, and then they'll go through a donation journey until the painting is complete. So the next time they go to the museum, they feel that connection to the artwork and to the cause. And so I think before I leave and I open it up for questions, we saw in the video essentially how StockCrowd is embedded within the Aluminati platform. But I think the key thing here is when you have communities that are which are joined together, those communities invariably want to take action together. And so having this integrated fundraising solution is a neat way of essentially tooling up that community to have impact. So with that, maybe I'll open it up for any questions that anyone may have.
I have one question. Here, we're based in Switzerland, so therefore we have a lot of family offices which also have different charities, etc. In terms of the platform, how would you structure the costs of raising funds, and how do each party participate in that? Do you structure that yourselves?
Yeah, so it comes down to the organisation, but and I'll give you some examples. We have examples of that already, and so we support Swiss francs. We've got the tax infrastructure for Switzerland as well, because that's important in terms of being able to ensure that donors are able to get the right tax relief and do it in an efficient way. But in terms of the structure, it can be done in multiple ways. You can have an administrative, if you like, holding at the top, which has all the controls around administration access and so forth. And then you can then have connected offices or parties, depending on how you want to split things up, that then have the flexibility to be able to go and design their own campaigns, launch their own campaigns, which are then separate to everyone else's. So you can divide that up in any way that you would see fit. There's no limits really from a technology standpoint, but it's a common thing. So for example, we have a business school in Spain, which is ESA, that has branches in Munich, branches in New York. ESA at the central level wish to have that central administration, but they want their branches to have total autonomy in the way that they launch campaigns and the currencies that they launch those campaigns in.
Right. Just one question. In Switzerland, we have a lot of different cultures. So therefore, the cultures obviously wish to raise maybe money for underdeveloped countries. So therefore, how would you help in the creating of associations if they're not in that country or participating? Would you help in the structure there to give them the ability to do that?
So we wouldn't be from a sort of an introduction, and where we have relationships. We've introduced customers to organisations, for example, in the US, and we've introduced customers in Spain into organisations in the UK where we think there are synergies there. But so where there are opportunities to build those bridges, absolutely. But fundamentally, we're a software company, and so what we would be able to help with is to give advice around how you might structure that. So if you've got lots of different organizations that are all wanting to sort of feel connected at one level, but be able to have independence at another, then we can do that through the marketplace concept, where you've got a single place that maybe explains the commonalities between organizations, but then be able to delve back into the details so those organizations can fundraise for their own causes. Which would mean in a single, to bring that home, that would mean having, for example, a single landing page branded around a theme, but where 3 or 4 multiple charities could all be fundraising in the same page, with the money going to each of those 4 charities completely independently, without any crossover between them, and without any of that money coming via StockCrowd.
Ben, thank you for the presentation. Really great to see the new visual fundraising pages as well. They always impress me. Something that struck me was the trend of peer fundraising, basically as a parallel to one of the trends we're seeing in the wider market, which is where people get their information. So increasingly, they say, whether it's the news and media, or in fact the product that you buy, it's less about the communication from the company or the central organization, and it's more about the influence of your peers, whether they're direct peers or whether they are influenced in social media. Do you have any kind of information insights in terms of the sort of macro trend, and what is the thing which influences those allocation of philanthropy, and how that's changing in this digital age?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's why I think the peer-to-peer is so powerful. It is that it comes back to that point I made earlier, where you might be connected. I'll give you an example, Daniel, where if you're a company and you wish to brand your company around the theme of wanting to support, say, dementia research, and you have a team in Singapore, a team in New York, a team in London, those teams will feel connected to that cause overall, but they're not necessarily going to want a team in New York. The individuals are not necessarily going to want to give money to a dementia research charity in the UK. What they prefer to do is give it to a dementia research charity in New York, or certainly in the nearby area. And so that presents a problem. How do you connect global audiences? And so what the technology enables you to do is set up a peer-to-peer infrastructure where the underlying causes can be different, but connected by a theme. And you're right in the sense that when people give, they're feeling a much stronger affiliation to be able to give to a friend, because they know who they are, and that's really their main driver, as opposed to the cause itself. That individual could be running for the British Heart Foundation or dementia research. The reason the person's giving the money is because it's their friend doing the run, and not necessarily because they feel personally connected. And you can look at that in 2 ways. In some ways, that's a sort of almost a cynical side to giving, but actually it presents a real opportunity, because if you can tap into donors that don't actually feel a personal connection to the cause, then that can only be a win-win for the fundraising organization. And that's what peer-to-peer gives you the ability to do.
It doesn't seem cynical. I think it's just tapping into that human condition of caring about the people that you care about. You care about what they care about too. The other thing I wanted to ask about was, again, this is with my product hat on here at Aluminati, and obviously we're excited to be working with you guys. The visualizations that you've built with the grids for the bus or in a painting are very much about the product or the cause that is being supported. At my old college, there was a campaign where people were able to name a brick or a gargoyle statue around the actual building that was being fundraised for. Do you think there will be an interesting effect if we were able to use our identity management system, where we know who the people are and we validated them, to maybe sponsor a tile and actually get their name placed on that tile? Just an idea that came out as I was listening to you today.
Yeah, and absolutely. And we in fact ran a very successful campaign for a university a number of years ago, which was called Name a Seat, and we designed in the creative template the lecture theatre that they wished to build, and donors were able to buy a seat, and that then would be named after that individual. They'd have a nameplate. We see similar requests coming in from football clubs, for example, and rugby clubs that are looking to fund new stadiums or build 4G pitches where people can feel like they own a brick or own a part of the pitch or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, I do think there's a real connection there that organisations can make with people. And yes, the short answer is I think it would work really well with the Illuminate platform.
What has been the most successful campaign around the sort of visual infographic campaign formats?
When COVID came around, we actually repurposed in fact, I can share it so people have an idea of what it looked like. But there was a cancer campaign that had actually been successful, where users could destroy a cancer cell on screen and turn it into a healthy cell. So here's I don't know if you can see this here. When COVID came around, we switched these switched these cancer cells out for images of COVID-19 cells, and so you could go and destroy COVID through donations, and that raised about €2 million in about 6 weeks. So they can be really, really powerful as a way of capturing people's attention. And I think the thing to know with these kind of templates is when to use them, as much as if you use them. If you're just looking for a sort of, day-to-day ongoing engagement with donors, then I don't think these templates are any more effective than just a normal engagement process through an efficient donate form. But when you start thinking about sort of capital projects where there's a real clear identity around what it is that the organisation is trying to raise money for, then these creative templates can be really quite powerful.
The 2 million in 6 weeks raised, and was that a significant amount through that interface?
It was all through that one interface.
All of it, all of that. That's an amazing result. Fantastic. Be interested to know from others in the room, if you're in a position to join the conversation, please do. The sorts of campaigns you guys are running, what you're raising money for. Perhaps you can challenge Ben on how that might be portrayed in this kind of format. If anyone fancies sharing their own campaign challenges, that would be great.
I'm Doina. I'm from Moldova. I don't know if you heard about my country or not. Everybody is more busy now here with fundraising, which is most important for needy people. But I'm sure with the latest news, everybody heard about Moldova too. What I want to say is that we have a lot of small NGOs in my country. And they are struggling, of course, with fundraising. Depending on the trend, the universal trend of COVID-19, the war, or anything else, the funds are redirected to one field or the other. But people here in my country, they still need help. And we don't really have big foundations here who would be able to offer the money, or companies who would be able to offer the money, especially because the law in our country does not support philanthropy. So if a company wants to give a donation, they have to pay the income tax from that donation too, even if it's coming from the money from which the taxes were paid already. So our only way is to find donations abroad. And another source, which is significant to my country, is the people who left the country and they are working in all Europe or America or other countries. So in fact, they are supporting the country a lot by sending their own money here. Besides, because they found a job in another country, of course they did it because they could not live here. And they are supporting their own families. They left their children sometimes. And so they're sending the money for their own families. And also because I'm a fundraiser, we are trying to involve them into social activities. So we are trying to fundraise through them. And from the income they have, we are advocating for each of us for our causes. And we're trying to organize social activities, social care, home care activities for people. Another aspect which I want to stress on is the fact that most of people in our villages do not have a computer at home or internet connection. So for me, it would be difficult to tell them to create a platform and to fundraise because they don't have this possibility. Fundraisers like me or bigger organizations who can fundraise for small organizations, we are the answers for the poor people in our villages. So my question now, what would you advise? What would be the best digital way to invite sponsors from other countries? And these are legal entities, but maybe also there would be a good way to create a platform for individuals who left this country to find a better home, a better job. And what would be the way to involve them? Maybe you have some thoughts about it. It will be very helpful for me, but also for a lot of other fundraisers and small organizations from our villages.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Good to meet you, Dana, and thanks for the question. I think there are a few aspects to the question that may be more relevant than others, but I think that the first thing is that we believe that fundraising has to be accessible to anyone who's looking, of any size. And we sort of did a deep hard look at ourselves about a year ago, and our actions actually weren't really marrying with that philosophy. For example, we were charging an onboarding fee to organizations, and we were charging fixed fees every month. They weren't particularly high. We didn't perceive them to be particularly high, but they were a barrier to entry. They were a barrier to organizations willing and able to take the risk to start fundraising and start this journey that I referred to. And so we completely overhauled our pricing infrastructure so that we don't charge an onboarding fee, and with a starter plan that kind of gets organizations going, we don't charge that fixed fee because it completely de-risks the transition to starting to fundraise and starting to learn. And so you can start, and so that's from a sort of hard cash perspective. But the other thing that we were getting, we realized is that time, there's no time to evaluate 40 different platforms in the UK to understand which one of them is the best one, which one may still be there in a year's time, because not all of them can be. That creates a barrier in itself. People don't have the time and the resources to do that analysis. And so one of the things that we do with StockCrowd is you can have an organization set up and fundraising completely ready to go and collect donations within about half an hour. And so you don't lose time by getting started. So you haven't lost money and you haven't lost time. So it may just tip the balance in terms of be willing to take the risk. So that's the first thing. The second thing was when you've got an international audience that may wish to support your causes, then you need to set up an infrastructure that enables them to do that in a way that they wish to give. And that starts getting into more technical things around if you, for example, have supporters in the US, they will want to do that in a way where they get income tax relief because they wish to donate in dollars. And so the only way they can do that is by donating to a registered US charity, a 501c3. And so most small charities in any country won't have a registered 501c3. So what we have done is a strategic partnership with the Charities Aid Foundation, where we have an agreement with them that we can fundraise in a way where we can have multiple currencies in a single donation form. And I can show you an example if it's helpful, where donors can choose which region, which country they're donating from. And if they're donating from the UK, they can gift aid the donation. If they're donating from the US, they can donate in dollars and get the tax certificate. We're all in one single donation form. So we've got a tax and currency infrastructure in the platform that enables money to come in multiple ways to a single point. And then I think the other thing is around, in terms of, I think your question also included, how do you sort of engage corporates or companies, legal entities? And I think the question there is what's in it for them, and what's in it for them is a brand awareness and aligning their brand to society's largest causes. And there's plenty of organizations out there that really do want to do that and are starting to take that much more seriously than they have historically over the last 10 years. And what our platform enables them to do is to set up this concept of a marketplace. They can have a theme that invites individuals and invites charities that are doing things for the cause that they wish to align their brand to. The charities are getting a platform that they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford potentially, or they wouldn't necessarily have the same breadth of reach. And the organization, the company, the legal entity is able to understand and aggregate all of the activity that has been done through that channel and be able to tell a story to its stakeholders, its shareholders, its customers, and its own employees. Look at the kind of company that we are. Here's the marketplace we've created, and look at the impact it's had for a cause that people care about. So hopefully that kind of gives you a sense, but it's partly technology flexibility, it's partly tax infrastructure, and it's partly making sure that legal entities have their own reason for wanting to help.
If I guess maybe just add on to that.
Thank you very much.
Just from a sort of community perspective, I mean, it sounds like what you have is a really valuable global network of people who have left your country and made lives in other countries where they may actually have personal networks into corporates. So you might find that actually there's a resource there that you can tap into. It's just trying to coordinate that message so that you're reaching those people who are your ambassadors to raise awareness around the world, and highlight the causes that you're looking to raise money for to their networks in country. So that's kind of the angle that we're coming from in terms of this partnership, in terms of can you actually build something where all of those people around the world can actually see each other and actually communicate. So rather than just being one individual person on a mission that perhaps you have found yourself through your own research, you are starting to store and build a repository of that, of that workforce as well, that army of goodwill. And so that's where we kind of start blending in the sort of fundraising technology side and the community technology side.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. We're trying, different groups who are advocating for different fields. Some of them for cancer research, or for elderly, or for disabled people, or community involvement. So we have, of course, different areas in which we need help, like many other countries, of course. What I was thinking is maybe it's best to have a structure for everybody to join one platform, so it's not chaotic. It's somehow organized, because having these ambassadors throughout the world, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who live there, some of them were born already in those countries, but it's somehow spreaded, and it's not unified, and it's not organized, and sometimes it's not monitored how money are being divided into different fields of activity. So I was thinking that maybe there should be one platform for the country level where people can join and advocate for their own needs. So thank you for your opinions and for your advices. I will take these to my colleagues, and maybe soon everybody will hear about such a platform in Moldova.
Good luck with that. I think your vision is spot on.
Thank you.
Could anybody else have a question that they are looking to ask at all? But yeah, well, okay. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for coming. It's been great to see you all.
Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Pleasure to meet you.